There are plenty of reasons to set sail on the open ocean, whether you're traveling, cruising, or just enjoying the vast blue expanse. But no matter the reason, one thing is certain: the ocean is unpredictable, and you never truly know what might happen out there. From terrifying sea creature encounters to heart-stopping moments witnessed by sailors, here are 20 scary ocean moments caught on camera. Number 20. Surfer versus shark. For our first video, I'm showing you a worst-case scenario regarding a lack of protection, as this is a story of a man being attacked by a great white shark while on nothing but a surfboard. This took place in New South Wales, Australia, where a man was just out and about enjoying the day and taking on the waves when he felt a random nudge on his surfboard. The hit was actually enough to almost send him off the board, and when he tried to figure out exactly what was going on, that's when he looked down into the water and saw a massive shadow from a 5-meter-long great white that was awaiting him. That's enough to get the Jaws theme going in your head, but it wasn't just a drive-by hit. The shark was staying around the surface, and the man noted it circled him and his board multiple times. Yet, quite heroically, he didn't just worry about himself but the surfers that were a short distance away as well. He tried to call out to them, but they couldn't tell what he was saying, and so he put himself at risk and began to paddle over to them. To their credit, they soon realized what was going on and came together to form a unique circle of protection to try and ward off the shark. They then went back to the beach and stayed there for a while as the adrenaline released from their systems. I don't really blame them for all of that at all. The sad irony of everything, of course, is that if that shark wanted to, it could have well taken on all of those surfers and easily won. A 5-meter shark is well over double the height of an average human being, and if it was even bigger, they would have been in even more trouble. Yet, things turned out quite well, and for that, everyone should be grateful. Number 19. Whale of a time. If you're wondering just how scary things are going to get from here on out, one thing that I'll be showing you many times over are animals attacking boats and humans for various reasons, including just causing random events like this one. For, as you can see here, this is absolutely a true video of a whale rushing out of the water and onto a boat, causing it to capsize. So what in the world happened? Honestly, nothing that would warrant what happened. 2 men were fishing off the coast of New Hampshire, just like they had done many times before without any incident. They were hunting for a particular kind of fish, and they weren't alone. Another boat was right alongside them, also partaking in the fishing that was happening. Then a whale showed up. That whale was feeding on the fish that the fishermen were trying to catch. And to their credit, both of the boats did try to give the whale a wide berth. But the problem was that the whale had rushed to get some of the smaller fish at one point, and that's when it came out of the water and fell on top of the ship, causing it to capsize with extreme force. Thankfully, the 2 fishermen in the capsizing boat were able to get away from the craft before it sank on top of them, and equally as important, the other fishing vessel was able to come to their aid, and both were pulled out of the water within minutes. Now, if you need a more haunting reminder of what happened in this instance, you should know that when the 2 fishermen crews went back out to the site with a news team to cover it, the whale was actually still there. That's right, it was still there, and the fishermen wisely noted why: because it's their ocean. That should be a haunting reminder to everyone. We can be in the ocean if we're close enough, but the whales live in it, and that's a big difference. Number 18. Killer whales versus boats. The last whale attack that I showed you was truly a case of bad timing. This next one is more of an intentional attack by whales. In fact, back in 2023, there wasn't only a one-off attack by killer whales on a small vessel. There was a wave of them, which is kind of freaky. The majority of the attacks occurred off the Strait of Gibraltar in Spain, but there were even those that happened in the waters of Scotland as well. In the case of this particular video, a killer whale was straight up attacking the boat by ramming into it. It was doing such a great job at it that it was able to puncture the boat, forcing the boat's owner to pump water out of it or else be sunk. Sadly, they were one of the lucky ones during the string of attacks. Multiple boats were actually sunk by orcas, and others were damaged like this one. Another case of this taking place was on video, which showed an orca coming up to the boat, ripping off its rudders, and then swimming away with its bounty. That's not how things are supposed to work, though. Let's ask the obvious question. What is actually the deal with these events and these whales? Well, the good news is there are 2 likely explanations for what was happening. The first is that some of the whales were just being playful, which parents can appreciate, as it very much is like a rowdy child testing its limits. Obviously, it doesn't really help with the whole sunken boat thing, but, kids will be kids. The other reason that some are wondering is if some of these whales had traumatic experiences with boats in the area and were simply lashing out as a result. That is actually a more plausible thing and more probable than you may think. Many animals are smart enough to understand what's not natural in the water and even remember that it's injured them in the past, and so they may end up striking out if they think that something like that's coming back. And you thought that whales were all nice and goody-goody creatures. Number 17. Swimmer versus seal. Remember in the first entry I did here where I stated that it's not our ocean but instead it belongs to animals that live in it? Well, here's the example of that. In Hawaii, a woman was simply swimming in the water along a beach where there were many, many people. A typical Hawaiian day, you know, and things took a turn for the worst when that swimmer got a bit too close to the pup of a Hawaiian monk seal. You can simply guess what happened next. The mother seal did not take too kindly to the woman's presence and began to chase her and attack her. Its motherly instincts were in full effect that day. People on the nearby beach were shouting at the woman to try and get out of the water so that the seal would leave her alone, but it was difficult to do after the initial attack. Thankfully, a nearby kayaker was able to intervene and get the woman to shore, and some onlookers had called in an ambulance to get her properly treated. For the record, the woman did nothing to warrant that attack. She probably didn't even know that the seal pup was near her when everything went down. Yet, it goes to show how fiercely an animal will protect their own when the time is right. Number 16. Sophia. Are you ready for a cool conflict that'll make you appreciate and fear orca whales even more? Well, great. National Geographic was doing a unique series called Queens, and in one of its episodes it was following the leader of a killer whale pod named Sophia. She was a grandmother whale, and so she had seen quite a bit in the ocean during her time, and she knows just as much as anyone else that great white sharks are beasts that could be a threat to her pod. Surely enough, she spots one and then gets down to work so that she can deal with it and help keep the pod safe. The question is, how would a queen like this handle such a threat to her family? Well, she just rushed in and absolutely body slams the great white. It would be later noted that the hit from that slam was so powerful that it actually broke the shark's ribs. The shark was in so much peril that it couldn't strike back when Sophia kept circling it, and so it was not in a state to harm her pod, and then she could move on. Now it's time for today's topic. In a chilling and surreal incident, a group of sailors navigating the frigid waters of the North Atlantic Ocean, not far from Greenland, encountered something they could hardly believe, an iceberg shaped like a massive human face. The eerie formation, with hollowed-out eyes and an open mouth, appeared almost as if it was frozen mid-scream. At first, the crew dismissed it as a bizarre coincidence, a trick of light and shadows against the ice. But as they circled the floating colossus, the unsettling feeling that they were being watched grew stronger. Some on board were reminded of the psychological phenomenon pareidolia, where the human brain recognizes familiar patterns, like faces, in inanimate objects. But others weren't so sure. The iceberg's haunting visage sparked a wave of speculation. Was it just an extraordinary example of natural ice erosion, or was there something more unnatural about its perfect, haunting symmetry? Some of the crew refused to take photos, believing it was a bad omen, while others claimed they heard faint sounds coming from within, though it could have just been the ice cracking. As the sailors left the area, the face continued to drift silently, leaving behind an unforgettable mystery that still lingers in the cold abyss of the Atlantic. Number 15. Moray eel versus diver. Now we're going to start a series of videos that will happen throughout the rest of this list that features animals not simply attacking people on boats but actually attacking divers. After all, when it comes to divers, they may be doing certain research or studies or just trying to get a cool video and some pictures of an animal, but they're emphatically in the animal's world, and that means that just about anything can take place. Such as with this diver, who found out the hard way that you don't want to mess with an eel. Specifically, you don't want to mess with the moray eel, which are known to attack a diver quite a bit if they feel threatened. As you can see, everything begins fine, and they even get some great shots of the eel itself, and then it rears around and attacks one of the divers who happens to not have any kind of protection around the arm where he was bitten. It's clearly just a light bite, but he likely had it checked on afterwards to ensure that he wasn't infected with something. While diving is a cool activity and really fun to do, there are all kinds of reasons to do it, and you should be mindful of your space with certain animals or else something like this may end up occurring. Number 14. Divers versus barracuda. Part 3 of our diving journey begins as we have a diver facing off against a barracuda. Now, anyone who's ever seen Finding Nemo's opening scene knows exactly why the fish is one of the scariest in the deep, because it's fast, aggressive, and can blitz through the water like a bullet if it wants to. When it comes to these divers, they get off more lucky than Marlin did, as this giant barracuda was more curious than aggressive in this case. You can see it being filmed by the divers, and then it quickly goes from one to the other to see what their deal is. Just look at the speed of it as it moves from person to person, and then picture that if it was chasing after you and trying to eat you. Obviously, the divers were fine in this case, but at one point, you do see the barracuda baring its teeth, and that's enough to send shivers down anyone's spine. Number 13. An iceberg. A story about a boat coming into contact with an iceberg. That sounds kind of familiar. This story is very real, though, and it did happen in 2022, so it's also rather recent. The story goes that this Norwegian cruise line ship, the Norwegian Sun, was doing a cruise through the Alaskan waters of the world when it came upon the Hubbard Glacier. That alone would not be exactly a cause for alarm, as you can absolutely see glaciers coming, and they're the main reason that icebergs exist. However, apparently, a chunk of that glacier was rather low in the water, and the cruise ship didn't actually see it, and so, as the passengers shockingly witnessed firsthand, they hit the iceberg with the ship. Titanic 2.0. Oh my god! Look at the video and peer closely into the water itself. At first, you don't see anything, as the ice is blending in perfectly with the water, and then the massive chunk of the now pummeled iceberg comes into view, and you can see that the scale of the thing is nothing to be laughed at. Yes, the crew was calling it Titanic 2.0, but it was not as dramatic as all of that. As for the impact, it did damage to the front of the ship, and those who were on board the vessel noted that the impact of the hit was so much that it sent some of them flying around when it happened. But now for the big question that a certain news anchor had to ask: how did a ship in this day and time actually hit an iceberg? It's actually a bit easier to answer than you may think. Ships are equipped with radar and sonar and other things to help detect something like an iceberg while ensuring that people piloting the craft don't strike them, but it's a little more difficult than that. First off, we've all seen radars fail, and then there's just plain human error. Not to mention, as shown in the video, icebergs can easily blend into the environment so that you don't see them coming, no matter how you look at it. There are still ways to hit an iceberg in this day and age, and for that, we all need to be mindful of the waters that we sail in. Thankfully, the ship was fine, and it even went in for repairs under its own power, and no one was seriously injured in the event. Number 12. Diver versus fish. Now, I know it's not exactly a catchy title, but I can't tell what kind of fish this is, and I don't want to lie about what you're about to see. This particular video traces back to one that we just did with the squid. Specifically, this is a diver that gets an up-close and personal look at a fish, and a giant one at that. He did what the other diver did and started to play with it, even seemingly getting a kind of connection with the fish as it's just going along with just about everything that he does. Eventually, though, it gets kind of tired of the diver, and it takes a bite out of his suit. The man punches back in reaction, and then the fish is gone. Fish do have their limits, and they don't often like being messed with. Number 11. Diver versus squid. One of the things that will definitely get you on the bad side of something like a squid is by continuously messing with it while you're next to it. So, you probably shouldn't really do that. In the case of this diver, he kept on playing with a red devil squid, which, as you can see, is a good size compared to the diver and has a much more mean look to it than the octopus that you've seen before. Surely enough, that squid had had enough of the diver's actions, and that's when it began to bite him. It didn't start out as being dangerous, that is, until the diver realized that it was piercing his chainmail and his wetsuit and might actually lose a hand to it. The lesson here to be learned is, don't overstay your welcome in the deep. You may actually end up living longer. Number 10. Sharks versus shark cages. The next one's quite a special one and encompasses an entire lot of attacks that have been caught on camera. Shark cages are what divers, scientists, and even thrill-seekers use to try and get closer to a shark without putting themselves at serious risk. The belief is that the steel structure will help to keep the sharks out, which is fair most of the time. However, whether it's been the BBC, Discovery Channel, Animal Planet, or just recreational content creators, they keep finding out that sharks will attack these cages, and sometimes they're able to break them open. Don't forget that force equals mass times acceleration. Some of the sharks are absolutely massive, and they will barrel into these cages and get uncomfortably close to the divers. That's why some are actually trying to get things banned for recreational purposes. Number 9. Diver versus octopus. Now, let's continue the series of divers coming into aggressive contact with other animals, where this time around, we have an attack on a diver by an octopus. And before you go laughing at the idea of this, you have to have a look at the size of the octopus compared to the diver itself. It's not a small octopus, and so it's not something to mock in the slightest. The attack begins simply with the octopus latching itself onto the diver's arm, and the diver then tries to get free. It's pretty standard stuff. That's when the octopus goes full tilt, latching onto the diver's camera rig and basically tries to wrap its entire body around the man. And then, when the diver gets free, the octopus decides to go after the camera and wrap itself around that. Talk about a clingy octopus. To be clear, though, the diver and the one who filmed the entire thing never felt as though they were in danger and said afterwards that they laughed at the entire thing and what the octopus was doing. Still, though, there must have been at least a little bit of tension, especially when the octopus kept on trying to make the camera rig for it. You just have to wonder what it would have done with its own camera. Number 8. A bull shark versus boat. Now, I just showed you what takes place when a whale messes about with a boat, but how about something a little smaller and a whole lot more aggressive? Yes, I'm talking about sharks. More specifically, I'm talking about a bull shark, which is one of the more aggressive sharks that you may find in this world. This particular incident took place in Florida, where all kinds of things like this happen more often than you may think. I mean, it is Florida, after all. This is another perfect example of that, as the boat in question was owned by a filmmaker who was out near the water watching a school of fish. Then, his camera turned toward his friend's boat, which just so happened to be out on the water as well, and was randomly being attacked by a bull shark. When I say it was getting attacked, I do mean it in the most traumatic sense. It was ramming the boat with its body and then went over to the engines, which were not operational at the time, and attempted to rip them to shreds. The boat had a lot of damage to it by the time the shark was done, and even the boat's owner was stunned by how much chaos that it had caused. This all begs the question of why. Why did the shark even do that? Well, it's a bit hard to say, but as noted earlier, it's an incredibly aggressive species of shark, and equally as important, there were other fish in the water, so it is possible that the shark just thought it was another predator and wanted to take it out so that it could get to the fish without any competition. Thankfully, the boat's owner was not harmed in the attack, but I'm sure that his wallet was when it came to repairs. Number 7. Scuttled ship. The sinking of a ship is rarely to be praised, unless it's being done to help create wildlife habitats. In the case of this ship, it was scuttled due to some serious damages that it had accrued during its final voyage. Apparently, it had been transporting a bunch of iron ore, and eventually it ran aground, causing enough damage that it just couldn't be saved, and so it was sunk down to the depths. It's honestly kind of majestic watching something like this take place. After all, you get to see just how much water it takes to even get a part of the ship to sink, let alone all of it. Plus, the sounds that the ship makes as it goes into the deep is truly unique. Number 6. Turtle versus shark. Now look, I do know that there are plenty of clashes in the ocean that many would love to see. However, there are some that should be incredibly lopsided affairs for pretty basic reasons, and one such matchup would be a shark going up against a turtle. Sharks eat turtles, so that ends the argument, right? Well, wrong. Here, we have a shark thinking that it's going to have an easy meal with a much smaller turtle, but the turtle itself is smart enough to keep its eye on the shark and keep on angling its body so that the shark can only bite on its shell. The shark, a sleek and powerful predator, circles the turtle repeatedly, looking for an opening to strike. Each time it lunges, the turtle instinctively rotates its body, presenting its hard, impenetrable shell as a shield. The shark's frustration becomes evident as it begins to thrash more aggressively, but the turtle remains calm and calculated in its movements. This display of agility and intelligence from the turtle is a reminder of how even smaller creatures can outwit larger predators. Onlookers who captured the encounter on video were amazed at the turtle's resilience and determination to survive. The shark eventually tires of the futile effort and swims away, leaving the turtle to continue its journey unscathed. Marine biologists have noted that this kind of behavior is not uncommon, as turtles have evolved to use their shells as their primary defense mechanism against predators. It's a testament to the turtle's adaptability and the balance of power in the ocean, where even the fiercest hunters don't always get their way. In the end, the turtle ends up surviving, and that's a pretty cool thing to see. Number 5. See the whale now. For many people, they don't only want to go out onto the ocean, they want to experience it, and many of those people are the ones who go on whale watching tours, all in the hopes that they'll see a whale come out of the water so that they can get really close. Enter this group of intrepid whale-watching hopefuls. You'll notice how the start of this footage is so perfect and pristine. The water's clear, it's a lovely day, and absolutely nothing is going on. Surely, nothing is about to burst out of the water and, well, where did that come from? The whale, a massive humpback, seemed to appear out of nowhere, its enormous body breaking the surface with incredible force. The sheer size of the creature left everyone on board in awe, with some passengers gasping and others cheering in excitement. As it spun in the air, the sunlight caught the water droplets spraying off its body, creating a dazzling display that felt almost magical. The sound of the splash as it hit the water was deafening, and the resulting wave rocked the boat slightly, adding to the thrill of the moment. One passenger later described the experience as the most incredible thing I've ever seen, while another joked that they got a free shower out of it. The tour guide explained that humpback whales often breach like this as a form of communication or play, though the exact reasons are still debated by scientists. The lucky group managed to capture the entire event on video, ensuring they had a memory to relive and share for years to come. Moments like these are what make whale-watching tours so popular, as they offer a rare glimpse into the majestic and unpredictable world of marine life. Yes, that happened. A huge whale jumped out of the water, spun in the air, and then splashed back down, drenching much of the boat in water and much to the joy of everyone on board. Some people do enjoy that sort of thing, and people love watching it in a video as well. Number 4. Shark versus Surfer 2. Here's another surfer versus shark tale for you, and this one is on a much bigger stage. This time, we're going to an actual surfing competition where a 3-time world champion was in the water getting ready to ride his next wave when the worst came to pass, and a shark came to attack. With everyone watching, you can see in real time the board and the surfer going under, and the people reacting to it, which includes the announcer, who goes from slightly curious about what's taking place to urging the rescue team to get out there and help everyone. The shark, later identified as a great white, appeared to circle the surfer before making its move, creating a moment of sheer panic for everyone watching. Spectators on the beach were frozen in horror, while others screamed and pointed toward the water, trying to alert the rescue team. The surfer later described the moment as surreal, saying he could feel the shark's immense power as it brushed against him. Incredibly, the shark's bite missed him entirely, and it only managed to tangle itself in the leg rope attached to his board. The surfer instinctively fought back, punching the shark and kicking at it to create distance. The rescue team acted quickly, speeding toward the scene on jet skis and pulling the surfer out of the water within moments. The competition was immediately halted, and the area was cleared to ensure no further danger. The incident sparked a renewed conversation about the risks surfers face and the need for better shark detection systems at major events. As you can see, the world champion was fine, and he explained the shark actually helped him to get away by getting him off of his leg rope. He was then soon retrieved by the rescue crew and taken back to shore for a proper medical checkup. Number 3. Divers versus hammerhead sharks. Our diver series returns, where this time we have something that is both scary and fascinating all at the same time. These divers were in the water doing their thing when all of a sudden they found themselves being pretty much surrounded by dozens, if not hundreds, of hammerhead sharks. These are another kind of aggressive shark and have attacked humans in the past. The sight of so many hammerheads moving in unison was both breathtaking and nerve-wracking, as their distinctive, wide-set heads cut through the water like living torpedoes. The divers remained as still as possible, knowing that sudden movements could potentially provoke the sharks. Hammerhead sharks are known for their schooling behavior, particularly during migrations, and this encounter was likely part of such a journey. The sharks' sleek, muscular bodies glided effortlessly through the water, their movements almost hypnotic to watch. Despite their reputation, hammerheads are generally not interested in humans unless they feel threatened or are provoked. One diver later described the experience as surreal, noting how the sharks seemed to move with a sense of purpose, completely ignoring the humans in their midst. The group of divers was lucky to witness such a rare and peaceful moment, as large schools of hammerheads are not commonly seen by humans. This encounter served as a reminder of the beauty and unpredictability of the ocean, where even the most feared predators can display moments of grace. Yet, almost eloquently, the sharks just passed by the divers on their way to wherever they need to go, and they didn't have a care for what the divers were doing. In the horror movies, however, that would be the sign of a bloodbath being imminent, but here, it's simply a sign that sometimes nature can end up surprising you in the end. Number 2. Divers versus whales. If you were hoping for another close call video, well, here's the perfect one for you. You could even call this a sequel to the first entry in the video. Here, a group of divers were in the water watching over a school of fish and everything else around them, but just like the first entry, there were some whales in the area as well. The divers were mesmerized by the serene beauty of the underwater world, completely unaware of the drama about to unfold. Suddenly, the water around them began to churn violently, a clear sign that something massive was approaching. The divers barely had time to react before 2 enormous humpback whales emerged from the depths, their mouths wide open in a spectacular display of lunge feeding. The sheer size of the whales was overwhelming, with their massive jaws creating a vortex that sucked in fish and water alike. One diver later described the experience as feeling like being caught in a natural vacuum, with the force of the whales' movement pulling them slightly off balance. The whales' baleen plates were clearly visible as they filtered out the fish, a rare and awe-inspiring sight for anyone lucky, or unlucky, enough to witness it up close. Despite the close call, the whales seemed completely unaware of the divers' presence, focused solely on their meal. The divers, on the other hand, were left in a state of shock, their hearts racing as they realized just how close they had come to being part of the whales' feast. Surely enough, those whales decided to come up for a meal, and 2 whales actually popped up out of the water with their mouths open, eating the fish, and they missed the divers by only a few feet. The expletive that the diver said upon seeing this happen in front of him was more than justified in the end. Number 1. Shark aboard. Picture this. You and your friends go out on a charter boat and have a nice fishing vessel to have some fun out on the water. Then, as you're doing your trip, you get an unexpected guest via a mako shark, as in, the shark actually jumps right into your boat to join you. Jumped on the boat. Oh my gosh! The sheer power and speed of the mako shark make it one of the most formidable predators in the ocean, and seeing one up close like this would be both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Mako sharks are known for their incredible leaping ability, often breaching the water during hunts or when hooked on a fishing line. This particular shark likely jumped in an attempt to free itself, not realizing it would land on the boat. The crew described the sound of the shark hitting the railing as a loud, metallic crash, followed by the chaotic thrashing of its powerful body. Its sharp teeth and muscular frame made it clear that any wrong move could result in serious injury. The passengers quickly backed away, some climbing onto higher parts of the boat to avoid the flailing shark. Despite the panic, the crew worked together to assess the situation and figure out how to safely release the shark without harming it or themselves. Thankfully, cooler heads would end up prevailing, and they were able to actually get the shark out of the railing and then out of the line it had gotten caught on so that it could be released and go back into the ocean. Still, though, it would have been a scary situation for anyone on board. That's a wrap on some of the most terrifying moments captured in the ocean. Which of these encounters sent chills down your spine? And which ones are you most relieved to have never experienced firsthand? If you've ever had a scary moment at sea, we'd love to hear about it. Share your story in the comments below. Don't forget to check out the other fascinating videos appearing on your screen, and I'll see you next time.